Hi, my name is Jason. I'm employed by the public sector, and I'm here at a web conference, which is a bit weird for the public sector to do something like that. I work for the NHS Leadership Academy. The Leadership Academy is the largest business development school in this country and the largest leadership development organization in the world. And with that responsibility, we try to do things a little bit different, fail, and keep trying. So I want to tell you not much about web to begin with, a little bit about psychology, and eventually we'll get to apply that to the web. Josh and Harry Roberts and Dave O'Brien and I have been working on something called NHSX, which is a e-learning platform for the public sector. And some of the things that I want to talk to are really the fallout from thinking through how on earth do we build something that works in the public sector and yet is innovative. Again, those two things don't often go together. And we've been trying over the past, 20 weeks to build something that 5,000 nurses can learn from and be inspired by. Not just what they learn, but the technology they use to do that. So, one of the difficult things when you're building something new is to consider, well, what do people want? And one of the common questions we can ask is that very same thing of people. What do you want this to do? And we get many different responses. There's a great film that was one of the first big Japanese films that came over to the UK called Rashomon. And in this film, there were very different perspectives of the same one event. A man got murdered, and we see throughout the film different trials going on and the different people that were witnesses to the event explaining what happened. And we end up with so many different views that at the end of the film, you're left with no idea what actually happened. And the same happens with the web, doesn't it? We ask people, we have a workshop, we spend days consulting, and we get so many different viewpoints, and we're left thinking, well, what's right? What do I need to do? What don't I need to do? When we were building NHSX, we spent a lot of time working out how to play video well and how to make it a bit seamless. And so the nurses aren't that technical, so we thought we'd make the play button big. We took up almost a quarter of the screen with this play button. And we thought, that'll do it, that'll work, they'll be able to click play, no problem. How do I click play? Where's the play button? And we were quite shocked by that, and we're still trying to work out what's the rationale behind people not being able to find this massive play button on the screen. When we haven't a clue about our thinking, something happens, something strange happens. And when we ask those questions about, well, what is the right thing to do in this situation? What do you want in this design? People start to make things up. That's the strange thing that happens. And that happens more often than you realize. So when we look at the figures, actually you'll see 11 million things your brain takes in 1 second. That's a lot of information to take in, and I bet you're not aware of that. So right now, just while I've been talking, how many billion things have gone into your head? It's quite astounding. And the reason you're not aware is because you've only actually thought about 40 of those things per second. And that's because our brain is split up into 3 parts. And those 3 parts, the old brain, deals with the instant reactions to things, when something's too hot, when a car's coming at you out of a side road, and you don't know what to do and you swerve. All those sorts of reactions happen in the old brain. And that's very disconnected from the next brain in your head, which is the midbrain, which deals with your emotions. And then the third brain in your head is the new brain, which deals with just those 40 out of 11 million pieces of information you take in every second. And yet that's the part of the brain that does all of the rational thinking. So when you make a decision, and you're aware that you've made a decision, it's been your new brain that's done that thinking. This was a sketch I did in the office. My two little boys, 5 and 4 years old, they've just started learning, well, at the beginning of the year, they started learning how to draw stick men and make them look less stick-like, with bodies and fingers and big fingers. So I like to write down what the story was about. This is a story about a man and a pirate. So the pirate's the green guy. You see the hook on the end of his hand? And the other guy is coming to steal his underpants. So it's a famous story with children in schools, apparently. And so we drew this story over several pages and made a little book out of it. Now, when I show this picture to the 5-year-old who drew it and said, what's this story about? You could see him stop and think, and as we might do, say, what is it? I can't remember. Okay, there are two people. One must be a man. That's Daddy. That's Daddy. That's the right answer, isn't it? Yeah, okay. So that's Daddy. And it's just been Father's Day, so we get some brownie points, and obviously that's the right answer. But what goes on in the mind to see something very different from what you intended when you first drew that? To ask that of a child, you start to see that children, more than adults, start to create stories in their mind to rationalize their decision. So he's quite convinced now that this is a picture of Daddy, and there's no telling him otherwise. And that happens with adults as well. We come up with an answer, and then we backtrack and fill in the blanks to convince ourselves that we're right. So let me try a bit of interactivity here, okay? It's probably the most minimal amount of interactivity you can get in a room like this. So let's test it out. Can you raise your hand? Everyone's got a hand, and they've raised it. Excellent. Well, I can't really see, but I'm guessing so. Thank you. You can put it down now. See, that was interactive, wasn't it? Great. See, public sector does work. What I want to do is show you a grid of letters and numbers, and then ask you to look for a letter. And when you find it, raise your hand. Okay? Let's see who can do it the quickest. There isn't a prize. It's the public sector. I want you to find the letter B. Okay? It's like a Mexican wave almost. Excellent. Okay. And if you haven't found it yet, in the NHS we have doctors and we can sort that out. The letter B is bottom right, 3 in, 2 up. Just to give you a hint there. Now, if I ask you to rationalize how you found that, would you be able to do it? You found it? Yes. But what was the process that got you there? Now, if we do lots of study and monitor how you look and interact with this sort of thing, we'd see that, first of all, you scan across, and you've not found it, and you've got a bit bored, so you don't scan as far the next time. And then you scan down, and eventually you kind of figure out, oh, B's not in that area at all. It's somewhere further over there. Now, I'm sure when you're asked, how did you find that letter, you came up with a story. And actually, you probably had memories of exactly what you went through. And the question here really is, are those memories real? Or did you make them up to fit the conclusion you wanted? The B is much easier to see there, isn't it? If I asked you to put your hands up, I think everyone would put their hands up straight away. And the reason is because the mind sees the letter B there. Because it's on a different colour background, it's got a border, it stands out, and the primitive brain is much quicker than the older brain at assessing that information. The older brain wanted to search and do it really logically, and the new brain said, I see something different, look there. Oh, it's the letter B. And so that's why we have buttons on the web with, that are contrasting colors, because the eye is drawn straight away to things that are different, because the older brain works much quicker than the newer brain. Now, when we talk about memory and constructing a reason for the decision that we made, or the method that we took to arrive at a conclusion, we might think that our memory works in this way. This is the verbatim memory, where you follow the whole story through from beginning to end. You start, I'm looking at the top left, and I'm going to move along, and I remember seeing all the letters, and then I jump down to the next line, or perhaps you did it in a different method, and you can recount the whole of your memory for that process. That doesn't happen very often. What actually happens is you have what's called a schema. You have a framework for looking at how the whole world works. Perhaps once upon a time we had a schema for the way that the world works, in that the earth was obviously flat, and the sun went around us, and that made other things make sense. The way that the sun rose and went down, it was obviously going around us, wasn't it? That was a framework for our thinking. And with everything, we have a framework for thinking. And the difficulty with web design, and this is where we start to come back to our subject, is what are the schemas that are going on in people's minds as they approach a solution? What your memory actually does, when you are asked the question of how did you find that letter B, or any question, what do you think of this design that I've just presented to you? The schemas create certain gist memories along the way. So it's not, so do you remember when Flash first came out, and the idea of tweening was invented, and we could just select the key points along the animation path, and then the computer guessed the rest. That's exactly what your memory does. There are gist points along your memory, and your mind fills in the blanks in between, on the fly. And so perhaps when we ask someone the question of, well, which of these three designs is the best? The memory that we're getting is made up between 2 points. It is not the process that arrived at, well, that button was better because X, Y, Z. Don't go to the because. My challenge to you is look at the facts and then work out the reasoning later. It's called confabulation. When you make up the gaps, when you put together information that isn't true, you've confabulated. You've created false memories. And we do that all the time, and it is not uncommon. It saves space in your memory. It's quicker. So there are lots of good things about it. But in our industry, it makes it really hard to figure out what is right and what is wrong in terms of design. So the question, well, what do you want? What do you think of this? Is actually a really horrible question. It's a really horrible question. Don't ask that question. Don't ask for opinions. Study how people interact with the design. So the idea of paper prototyping or HTML prototyping, do that. Watch how people move around the page. Get them to talk you through the process that they're going through. Give them tasks. So there are loads of different tools we can do to get that information out of people. We can create what are called personas, where we try and make up fictitious characters that might use our website or application. And with those fictional characters, we give them personalities, we give them jobs, we give them ages, and then we try to predict, well, how will they work with our site? And that's, I think, where we generally go wrong in this industry, and where I want to offer a new model for working with this type of research. So when we ask of our fictional character, because we've accurately represented our population, haven't we? We're building a website for the NHS, obviously. Why wouldn't I use that example? And we built NHSX for nurses. So if I create a fictional nurse, and ask of them, how do you think? So I might create a rough demographic that you're between 20 and 30, you're busy, you haven't got time for technology, so we can infer things from not having a great grasp of technology. You know, finding the play button is really hard, so therefore the conclusion is, let's make it big. And it didn't work. I want to buy my wife a book for her birthday. And she loves this book. She's seen it before. Other people have read it, so obviously it must be good. And it's got a nice cover. So I'm going to go and buy it. And so the process goes in the model that I want to propose that we think about the experience of the person. So in the schema, there are two parts. There's your experience, that's all the baggage that you bring with you. And then there's your beliefs about the future. So you've got a past and you've got a future as you approach everything and anything. So as we approach this website, my experience is that great thud that you get when the brown box comes through the letterbox and hits the floor. That noise that happens when you pull that kind of like fake Ziploc off the box and it flops open and you see the book. I love buying stuff on Amazon. That's my experience. And it's quite quick. A few clicks and you get there. I can't remember the whole process, but that's my experience. And my belief is that it's going to be simple. I'm going to click a button and I'm going to be able to order this book. So my expectation when I come to this site is the big button is the buy button. And I'm going to get that great experience that I've had previously. So when I come to this site, I bookmarked it on my phone when I was on the train, and then I thought I'd buy it when I got to my laptop. Didn't we wish we had Yosemite? And so I open the page up, and it takes me to the ebook version. I don't know this just yet. This is the ebook version. And so when I go to click buy, oh, it's not there. It's telling me it's this one-click thing where it delivers it straight to my Kindle. But I don't want it on my Kindle. I want the print version. So now I have to actually stop using my automatic memory and my old brain and my emotions to react to this page. I have to start thinking. And heaven forbid you should get people thinking on a website. The idea is that it should be intuitive, as we know. And so now I have to really look around the page and think, well, I want the print version. Where do I get the print version? It's not near this buy button. I have to look at this weird table in the middle, find the print version, which probably isn't the top one, click on it, and then I get another page which is a bit more confusing, which makes me stop and think again, because now there's a different cover here, and there's a different set of buttons. And there is, in the top right-hand corner, my favorite Buy Now button, which I can click, and then I get the experience I was expecting. So through that process, there was experience, there were beliefs, there were expectations, and there was a disconnect between the schema, my framework of thinking and my beliefs, and what actually was going to happen. And our job is to minimize that disconnect, to bring together expectations and the actual experience. So this is the model that I would propose. And that we don't get to by just drawing personas and by working through how do people now interact with something. We have to build that together and start thinking, well, where is the disconnect and how do we resolve that problem? Instead of guessing and assuming how our audience will react. So here we've got the schema on the left-hand side, the experience and the beliefs that I mentioned. And then in comes from the side some context. I'm on the Amazon website. And now that gives me a set of expectations that are built on my experience and beliefs. And when I come and interact with your site, with my expectations, and have the final outcome, how disjointed is that experience? And that gap there, that disconnect between schema and outcome, is, I think, the thing that we don't pay much attention to when we're designing sites. So I plot it out in a table like this. Each row in the table, I give a task. So I know the first task I came to the website with. I want to buy that book. I want to buy the paperback. I know what my experience is there and what my beliefs are, and I have an expectation. And I found through the example that the outcome was disconnected with my experience. And so I give at the end the comfort factor. The point at which I have to start now thinking is when that comfort factor gets way too low, and I have to start using the thinking part of my brain. So my task wasn't met. I had to change my task, and that happens all the time on the web. We start down one track, we see something, or we think differently, or somebody interrupts us, or we hear that great tune, and our task changes accordingly. Loads of different stimuli for that. And so we have a new experience based on our history and what we've just gone through, and we have a new set of beliefs, a new expectation, and then a new outcome. And so through this series of steps, we can see how we can reduce that disconnect and make it more comfortable to use our application. And to end with then, there are a few books that are really cool about how we think and how the web works and how those two join up. This one is great, Neuro Web Design. The great thing about psychology when you're dealing with websites is that problem that you get when you're trying to convince your audience that the design that you've done, design number 1, is the best. And design 2 and 3 are the crappy ones that you just did because they needed a design doing and some alternatives. Well, how do you rationalize that? And how do you deal with it when everyone picks the worst design? Well, if you have reasons for why you did your design in a certain way, if you have time to sit down with the customers and talk them through, well, I've done it this way because, then you're more likely to sell your design, and you're more likely to get your process and reasoning across to the decision makers that remove you from the end user that you're trying to help. So Neuro Web Design is great, and then if you're really techie, then this is like the textbook on the matter, Engineering Psychology and Human Performance. That's it for me.